The Zolthrine Empire controlled 73 star systems across the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. For 200 years they had expanded without resistance, claiming world after world. Their ships were sleek and powerful. Their weapons could turn rock into glass, and their shields could withstand the heat of a star. They believed themselves to be the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. 4 different alien species made up the empire. The Zolthrine themselves were tall, reptilian creatures with silver scales and 4 arms. The Vakrim were insectoid warriors with razor-sharp claws. The Morpheus were energy beings who lived inside mechanical suits. The Draylen were aquatic creatures who controlled their ships through neural links. Together, they had conquered dozens of lesser species without breaking a sweat. When the Zolthrine scouts first encountered human colony ships near the Kepler Reach, they laughed. The human vessels were ugly and boxy, built for function rather than beauty. They moved slowly compared to Zolthrine cruisers. The scouts reported back to High Command that these Terrans posed no threat whatsoever. Fleet Marshal Krathor studied the reports with his 4 eyes narrowing in satisfaction. He was the supreme commander of all Zolthrine military forces, a position he had earned through 3 decades of successful campaigns. His scales bore the scars of many battles, and his name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. These humans claim the Kepler Reach belongs to them, Krathor said to his council. They have established 3 colonies there already. This territory lies in our path of expansion. We cannot allow primitives to block our destiny. The council agreed without debate. They drafted an ultimatum and sent it to Earth via quantum transmission. The message was clear and brutal. Humanity had 30 standard cycles to withdraw from all contested systems. If they refused, the Zolthrine would destroy every human colony in the region. There would be no negotiation, no compromise. On Earth, the Terran Defense Coalition received the ultimatum with grave concern. The TDC was the unified military command that protected all human colonies and interests. They had been monitoring the Zolthrine expansion for years, hoping to avoid conflict. The TDC Council met in Geneva to discuss their response. Admiral Sarah Chen, the Supreme Commander of Terran Forces, addressed the assembly. The Zolthrine have 300 warships in active service. We have intelligence suggesting their weapons technology is approximately equal to ours in some areas. However, they have never fought an opponent who could fight back. Every species they conquered was either pacifist or too primitive to resist. Should we withdraw? Asked one delegate. We only have 15,000 colonists in the Kepler Reach. Is it worth a war? Admiral Chen shook her head. If we withdraw now, they will see it as weakness. They will make more demands. We must show strength, but we should offer diplomacy first. Earth sent a response offering to share the Kepler Reach. The territory was vast enough for both civilizations. Humanity proposed a joint commission to divide the systems fairly. They emphasized their desire for peaceful coexistence. Fleet Marshal Krathor read the human response and hissed with amusement. They beg for mercy before we have even struck. They offer to share what is rightfully ours. This proves their weakness, he dictated his reply personally. The Zolthrine Empire does not share. The Zolthrine Empire does not compromise. You have refused our generous offer to withdraw. Therefore, we declare war on humanity. Your colonies will be destroyed. Your people will flee or die. This is the fate of all who stand before the Empire. The declaration of war was broadcast across the entire galaxy using public channels. Every spacefaring civilization received the message. The Zolthrine wanted everyone to witness their might, to see what happened to those who defied them. Krathor assembled a battle fleet of 200 warships. It was the largest force the Empire had ever gathered. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and carriers assembled at the rally point. Thousands of fighter craft filled their hangars. The fleet's combined firepower could glass a planet in hours. The target was New Sarajevo, a human colony world with 2 million inhabitants. It was the largest human settlement in the Kepler Reach. Krathor planned to blockade the planet, then give the colonists one final chance to surrender. When they refused, he would bombard the world until nothing remained but ash and crater. It would be a message that echoed across the stars. The fleet entered human space without resistance. They detected no military presence, no defensive satellites, no warning buoys. The humans had abandoned their colonists to their fate. Krathor's confidence grew with every passing hour. When the fleet arrived at New Sarajevo, they found the planet undefended except for a small orbital station. Krathor gave the order to establish a blockade. His ships surrounded the world in a sphere of death. Nothing would escape. Then the response from Earth finally came. A single ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Zolthrine sensors identified it as the TDS Indomitable, a Vanguard-class dreadnought. It was alone. Krathor stared at the display in disbelief, then began to laugh. His entire bridge crew joined him. A single ship? Against 200? The humans had sent one vessel to face an entire battle fleet. It was the most absurd thing he had ever witnessed. "They mock us," said his second-in-command. "Or perhaps they truly are this foolish." Krathor opened a communication channel to the human ship. "I am Fleet Marshal Krathor of the Zolthrine Empire. I offer you one chance to surrender your vessel and return to Earth. Tell your leaders that New Sarajevo is ours." "Resistance is futile," the reply came quickly. A human female appeared on the screen. She wore a dark blue uniform with silver insignia on her collar. Her expression was calm, almost bored. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. Your ultimatum is rejected, Marshal. New Sarajevo is under the protection of the Terran Defense Coalition. You have entered our territory with hostile intent. I strongly suggest you withdraw your fleet immediately." Krathor's laughter died. The human female showed no fear, no hesitation. She spoke as if she held all the advantages. "Captain Vasquez," he said slowly, "you face 200 warships with a single vessel. Are all humans this delusional?" Vasquez smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Marshal Krathor, you declared war on humanity without understanding what that means. Allow me to educate you. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawing your forces. After that, I will consider you an active threat and respond accordingly." The transmission ended. Krathor sat frozen in his command chair. The audacity of these humans was beyond belief. Very well, he thought. If they wanted to die heroically, he would grant them that honor. He gave the order to his fleet. 20 warships broke formation and moved toward the Indomitable. They would destroy this impudent vessel and show humanity the price of defiance. The 20 Zolthrine warships moved into attack formation. They were a mix of cruisers and destroyers, each one bristling with plasma cannons and missile tubes. Their shields shimmered with purple energy. In every previous battle, such a force had been more than enough to overwhelm any opponent. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the approaching ships on her tactical display. The bridge of the Indomitable was quiet and professional. Her crew sat at their stations, hands steady, expressions calm. They had trained for this moment for years. "Weapon status," Vasquez said. "All systems green, Captain," replied Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her weapons officer. "Railgun batteries charged and ready. Point defense systems online. Missile pods loaded and armed. Electronic warfare suite standing by. Helm, bring us to battle stations. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage hostile forces. Fight smart, fight hard, and remember your training." Vasquez out. The Indomitable began to move. Unlike the graceful Zolthrine vessels, the human dreadnought was built like a hammer. It measured 3 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in armor plating and sensor arrays. Its main weapons were 8 railgun turrets, each capable of accelerating tungsten slugs to 90% the speed of light. The Zolthrine ships opened fire first. Beams of superheated plasma streaked across the void. Missiles launched from dozens of tubes, their engines burning bright. It was an overwhelming barrage that should have vaporized any target. The Indomitable's point defense systems activated with mechanical precision. Dozens of small turrets tracked the incoming missiles with perfect accuracy. They fired in bursts, each shot calculated by the ship's combat computer. Missiles exploded harmlessly in space, their debris scattering like confetti. The plasma beams struck the Indomitable's shields and dissipated. The human shield technology was different from the Zolthrine version. Instead of absorbing energy, it redirected it, channeling the force away from the hull. The temperature inside the ship remained comfortable. "Return fire," Vasquez ordered. The railgun turrets spoke. 8 tungsten slugs, each weighing 5 tons, accelerated down magnetic rails. They achieved relativistic speeds in milliseconds. At that velocity, they didn't need explosives. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. The first Zolthrine cruiser never knew what hit it. The tungsten slug punched through its shield as if it didn't exist. The projectile passed through the ship from bow to stern, the passage creating a shockwave that tore the vessel apart from the inside. Secondary explosions rippled along the hull. Within seconds, the cruiser was debris. The second and third shots found their marks with equal precision. 2 more Zolthrine ships died, their crews never having time to evacuate. On the Zolthrine flagship, Marshal Krathor watched in horror as 3 of his ships vanished from the tactical display. "What happened?" he demanded. "How did they penetrate our shields?" His science officer studied the sensor readings with trembling hands. "Sir, the projectiles are traveling at 0.90 C. At that velocity, shields cannot maintain coherence. The kinetic impact is, the energy release is equivalent to multiple fusion warheads. Evasive maneuvers," Krathor shouted into the fleet channel. "All ships scatter and return fire." The Zolthrine vessels tried to break formation, but the Indomitable was already adapting. Lieutenant Webb worked his console with practiced efficiency. Launching missile pods Alpha through Delta. Targeting solutions locked. 4 pods detached from the Indomitable's hull. Each pod contained 50 missiles. The moment they cleared the ship, the missiles activated and spread out like a swarm. But these weren't simple explosives. Each missile housed 20 smaller submunitions. When the missiles reached their targets, they split apart, turning 4 pods into 4,000 independently targeting warheads. The Zolthrine point defenses tried to respond, but there were simply too many targets. Their targeting computers couldn't keep up. Warheads slammed into shields, overwhelming them through sheer numbers. Once the shields failed, the warheads struck hulls, tearing through armor and venting atmosphere into space. 6 more Zolthrine ships went dark. Some listed helplessly, their crews scrambling for escape pods. Others simply exploded, their reactors breached. "Deploy electronic warfare," Vasquez said calmly. The Indomitable's electronic warfare officer, a young woman named Sarah Kim, activated her systems. Powerful electromagnetic pulses radiated from the human ship. At the same time, sophisticated hacking programs launched into space, searching for Zolthrine computer networks. The Zolthrine had never encountered warfare like this. Their ships suddenly found their sensors reporting false targets. Their communications became garbled with static. 3 destroyers lost all computer control simultaneously, as human viruses infiltrated their systems. The ships went dead in space, floating helplessly. In less than 30 minutes, 15 of the 20 Zolthrine ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 5 ships turned and fled at maximum speed, their crews in full panic. Marshal Krathor could barely process what he had witnessed. 15 ships gone, against a single human vessel. It was impossible. It defied everything he knew about warfare. "Get me their captain," he ordered. Captain Vasquez appeared on his screen again. She looked exactly as calm as before, as if she had just completed a training exercise rather than a real battle. "Marshal Krathor," she said, "I warned you. That was your education. Your ships are destroyed because you didn't understand what you were fighting. Human weapons technology has been refined through thousands of years of warfare. We have fought each other with everything from sharpened sticks to nuclear weapons. We learned hard lessons about combat efficiency." Krathor's scales flushed with anger. "You destroyed 15 ships. You murdered thousands of my people. You declared war," Vasquez replied coldly. "You threatened our colonies. You had every opportunity to withdraw. This is what war with humanity looks like, Marshal. And this was just 1 ship. Now I will ask you again. Withdraw your fleet from New Sarajevo. You have 1 hour." The transmission ended. Krathor sat in silence, his mind racing. Pride warred with practicality in his thoughts. The warrior in him demanded vengeance. But the commander in him recognized a terrible truth. He had made a catastrophic mistake. "Marshal," his second-in-command said quietly, "what are your orders?" Krathor stared at the tactical display. He still had 180 ships. Surely numbers would make the difference. The humans had been lucky, that was all. Or perhaps their single ship was their only advanced vessel. Yes, that must be it. They had sent their best ship because it was all they had. "We regroup," Krathor said. "Recall all ships to defensive positions around the fleet. We will analyze what happened and plan our next attack. I want our best scientists studying those human weapons. We will find a weakness, but doubt gnawed at him. The human captain had shown no fear, no desperation. She had fought with the confidence of someone who knew she would win. What did she know that he didn't? On the Indomitable, Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. The Zolthrine were learning, but they still didn't understand the full picture. "Lieutenant Webb, status report," she said. "All systems nominal, Captain. We expended 4 missile pods and approximately 10% of our railgun ammunition. Point defense capacitors are recharging. We can maintain combat operations for another 16 engagements of this intensity." Casualties? None, ma'am. Minor shield fluctuations on the port side, but no damage. Vasquez nodded. She opened a ship-wide channel. This is the captain. Excellent work, everyone. That was a textbook engagement. Stay sharp. This isn't over yet. She settled back in her command chair and thought about what came next. The Zolthreen would attack again. They had to. Pride wouldn't let them retreat after losing only 15 ships. But when they came, they would come with everything they had. Good, she thought. Let them commit. Let them learn exactly what they had started. Humanity didn't want this war, but now that it had begun, they would finish it properly. The Zolthreen would understand, even if understanding came too late. Captain Vasquez pulled the Indomitable back toward New Sarajevo's asteroid belt. The massive rocks would provide cover and tactical advantages if the Zolthreen attacked again. More importantly, it bought time for the civilian evacuation ships to finish loading refugees from the planet's surface. Marshal Crethor called an emergency council meeting. The 4 species of the Zolthreen Empire gathered via holographic communication. Their leaders appeared as glowing projections around the conference table. Matriarch Velsha of the Vokrim clicked her mandibles in agitation. 20 ships destroyed by 1 human vessel. This is unacceptable. Perhaps we should negotiate a ceasefire while we study their technology. High Priest Mordan of the Morpheus flickered with angry red light. Negotiate? We declared war before the entire galaxy. If we back down now, we appear weak. Every species we have conquered will see this and rebel. Then what do you suggest? Asked Tidecaller Shen of the Draylen. Send more ships to die? Crethor raised one of his 4 hands for silence. I have analyzed the battle recordings. The human weapons are more advanced than we anticipated, yes, but they are not invincible. Their single ship cannot face our entire fleet at once. Mathematics favors us. We have 180 ships remaining. Even if their weapon efficiency is 10 times ours, we will overwhelm them. How many ships do you propose to send? Velsha asked. 100, Crethor said. Half our remaining force. We will attack in coordinated waves. The first wave will test their defenses and force them to expend ammunition. The second wave will exploit whatever weaknesses we find. The third wave will finish them. The council voted. 3 species agreed. Only the Dralen abstained, but they were bound by the majority decision. While the Zolthreen prepared, one of their intelligence officers made a disturbing discovery. Junior analyst Kethrim had been researching human history through their public databases. What he found made his blood run cold. He requested an urgent meeting with Marshal Crethor. Sir, I have studied human military history. I believe we have made a grave error. Crethor barely looked up from his battle plans. Explain quickly. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire existence, Kethrim said. In the last 300 years alone, they fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million of their own species. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire world. They created something called nuclear weapons, which split atoms to release catastrophic energy. We have fusion weapons as well, Crethor said dismissively. Yes, sir, but humans built thousands of these weapons and aimed them at themselves. They nearly destroyed their own civilization multiple times. They have a military philosophy called total war, where every resource of a society is dedicated to victory. They have another doctrine called mutually assured destruction, where they promise to annihilate anyone who attacks them, even if it means their own destruction. Crethor paused. Are you saying they are insane? No, sir. I am saying they are extremely dangerous when threatened. Every war they have ever fought, they fought to absolute victory or absolute defeat. They do not surrender easily. They do not quit. And, sir, there is one more thing. I found a human military saying that appears in many of their documents. Peace through superior firepower. They build their entire defense strategy around having weapons so terrible that no one dares attack them. Then why did they send only 1 ship? Crethor demanded. Kethrim's voice dropped to a whisper. What if that 1 ship is enough, sir? What if they sent it to send us a message? Crethor dismissed the analyst. The report troubled him, but he had already committed to the attack. The fleet was ready. In 6 hours, they would launch. The 100 Zolthreen warships moved into position. Crethor organized them into 3 waves as planned. The first wave of 30 ships would advance directly, drawing the human ships' fire. The second wave of 40 ships would flank from 2 directions. The final 30 ships would wait in reserve to exploit any opening. All ships, Crethor transmitted, Today we prove that the Zolthrine Empire cannot be defied. Attack! The first wave accelerated toward the Indomitable. Captain Vasquez watched them come with a slight frown. They are learning, she said to her bridge crew. Multiple approach vectors, staggered timing. They are trying to overwhelm us. Shall we retreat, Captain? Her helmsman asked. Negative. We hold position. Lieutenant Webb, let's show them what missile superiority really means. Deploy all long-range pods. The Indomitable had been holding back in the first engagement. Now it revealed its true capability. 20 missile pods detached from the hull, each containing hundreds of missiles. These were long-range interceptors designed specifically for fleet actions. The pods launched their payloads. 4,000 missiles screamed toward the first Zolthrine wave. But these missiles were different. They had better sensors, better propulsion, and better AI guidance systems. When the Zolthrine tried to shoot them down, the missiles dodged, weaved, and adapted their approaches. The Zolthrine point defenses managed to destroy perhaps 30% of the incoming missiles. The rest found their targets. Explosions blossomed across 30 ships. Shields overloaded. Hulls cracked. Reactors breached. In less than 10 minutes, the entire first wave was destroyed or crippled. The second wave faltered, but orders drove them forward. Krathor screamed commands across the fleet channel. Continue the attack! They must be running low on ammunition, but they weren't. The Indomitable deployed drone swarms next. Thousands of small autonomous combat units poured from launch bays. Each drone was barely 2 meters long, but they carried powerful cutting lasers and shaped explosive charges. They moved with insect-like coordination, guided by a sophisticated AI network. The drones descended on the second wave like locusts. They were too small and too numerous for the Zolthrine weapons to target effectively. The drones cut through shields using concentrated laser fire, then attached themselves to hulls and detonated. Ship after ship fell to the swarm. 25 ships from the second wave died. The remaining 15 broke formation and tried to escape, but the drones pursued relentlessly. Krathor could not believe what he was seeing. 55 ships destroyed. Over 50,000 crew members dead or missing, and the human ship had barely moved from its position. Third wave, advance at maximum speed, he ordered desperately. Get in close where their missiles cannot be used effectively. The final 30 ships charged forward, closing the distance rapidly. Perhaps in close combat, their plasma weapons would have an advantage. Perhaps the human ship couldn't use its devastating railguns at point-blank range without risking collateral damage. They were wrong. Spinal mount, Captain Vasquez said quietly. Full power. The Indomitable's main weapon had not yet been used. Running down the center of the ship, from bow to stern, was a massive electromagnetic accelerator. It was designed to fire a single enormous projectile at near light speed. The weapon drew power from the ship's main reactor and took 30 seconds to charge. When it fired, the projectile was a solid tungsten rod 20 meters long and 3 meters in diameter. The recoil pushed the entire 3-kilometer-long dreadnought backward. The rod crossed the distance to the Zolthrine fleet in less than a second. It struck 3 ships that happened to be in perfect alignment. The projectile cored through the first ship, then the second, then the third. The kinetic energy transfer was so violent that all 3 vessels exploded simultaneously, creating an expanding sphere of plasma and debris. The remaining 27 ships of the third wave scattered in pure terror. Discipline broke completely. Ships fled in random directions, their crews abandoning all military protocol in their desperation to escape. Captain Vasquez opened a wide-band transmission. Her face appeared on every Zolthrine ship's communication screen. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. I want every ship in this system to hear me clearly. The Indomitable is not our most powerful warship. It is not even in our top 10 vessels. We have over 300 ships of equal or greater capability. Marshal Krathor, you declared war on humanity because you thought we were weak. You were wrong. You have now lost over 90 ships to a single vessel. Consider what our full fleet could do. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. The transmission ended. Across the Zolthrine fleet, crew members sat in stunned silence. They had seen their navy shattered. They had watched their ships die by the dozens. And now they learned that this human vessel was not even among humanity's strongest. Krathor slumped in his command chair. Everything had gone wrong. The humans had superior weapons. Superior tactics, superior training, and apparently far more ships than intelligence had suggested. "Sir?" his second-in-command said shakily. "What are your orders?" Crethor did not answer. He was thinking about junior analyst Kethrim's report. Humans who fought total wars. Humans who built weapons capable of destroying worlds. Humans whose military doctrine promised overwhelming retaliation against any threat. He had dismissed it as the ravings of primitives. Now he understood. He had declared war on a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing, and they had only just begun to show him what that meant. Marshal Crethor sat alone in his quarters, staring at casualty reports. 91 ships destroyed, over 73,000 crew members dead, thousands more wounded or captured, all within 48 hours. All at the hands of a single human vessel. The Zolthrine High Council demanded his presence via emergency transmission. The four species were no longer united. Accusations flew across the communication channels. The Draylen blamed Crethor for underestimating the humans. The Vokrim demanded immediate withdrawal. The Morpheus and Zolthrine leadership still wanted to continue, but their voices were growing weaker. Before Crethor could address the council, his sensors detected something massive entering the system. His tactical officer's voice shook with fear. "Sir, we have a new contact." "It is enormous. Mass reading suggests it is over 50 kilometers in length." "Show me," Crethor ordered. The holographic display showed something that made his blood run cold. It was not a ship. It was a station, a massive orbital platform bristling with weapons. The Zolthrine database identified it immediately. A planet-killer bombardment platform, similar to their own world-breaker technology. But this was different. This platform moved under its own power, guided by massive fusion engines. As Crethor watched, 6 smaller vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel around the platform. They were Zolthrine ships, but they transmitted human identification codes. "They captured our world breaker," Crethor whispered, "and they brought it here." A transmission arrived. Not from Captain Vasquez this time, but from someone new. A human male in an admiral's uniform appeared on the screen. His hair was gray, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and cold. "I am Admiral Richard Torres, commander of the Terran Defense Coalition 4th Fleet. Marshal Crethor, you deployed a planet-killer weapon to threaten civilian populations. Under the laws of war recognized by the Galactic Council, this constitutes a war crime. Your worldbreaker platform is now in our possession. The crew has been taken as prisoners of war and will be treated according to the conventions. However, I want you to understand something very clearly." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. "You threatened to commit genocide against 2 million human civilians. By the laws of warfare, we would be justified in responding with equal force against your populations. We could use this platform to destroy Zolthrine colony worlds. We could glass your cities from orbit. We have the capability. But we will not. Do you know why?" Crethor did not answer. He could not find his voice. "Because we are not you," Admiral Torres continued. "Humanity fights wars to achieve objectives, not to indulge in slaughter. Our objective is security for our people and justice for your crimes. Therefore, I am delivering an ultimatum. You have 72 hours to accept the following terms. Complete withdrawal from all human-controlled systems. Payment of war reparations to cover damages and loss of life. Surrender of all personnel responsible for war crimes to face trial at a neutral tribunal. Establishment of a demilitarized zone monitored by neutral peacekeepers. These terms are non-negotiable. If you refuse, we will bring the full might of the Terran Defense Fleet to your homeworlds. We will not target civilians, but we will systematically destroy every military installation, every warship, every defense platform you possess. You will be left defenseless before the galaxy. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Crethor sat frozen. 3 more human warships had arrived during the Admiral's speech. They were different classes than the Indomitable, but equally massive and clearly powerful. 4 Terran warships now faced his remaining 89 ships. The mathematics were no longer in his favor. The Zolthrine High Council dissolved into chaos. The Draylen immediately voted to accept the terms. The Vokrim followed within the hour. But the Morpheus leadership and a faction of the Zolthrine military refused. They argued that surrender would mean the end of the Empire. Better to fight to the last ship than submit to humiliation. The Empire split. 2 species accepted Earth's terms and began recalling their ships. Two species chose to continue the war. Krathor found himself commanding forces from only the Morpheus and his own species, barely 40 ships remaining under his direct command. "This is madness," his second-in-command said privately. "Sir, we cannot win. We should accept the terms." "I have my orders," Krathor replied. "High Command has authorized the use of all available weapons. If we are to fall, we will make the humans pay a terrible price," but even as he said it, he knew it was false bravado. The humans had already proven they could fight with minimal casualties. What price could he extract? More of his own people dying for pride? 6 days later, the Terran defense fleet arrived in force. Not 300 ships as Captain Vasquez had claimed. 50 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. But these 50 ships were enough to darken the stars with their mass. Admiral Torres commanded from the TDS constellation, a dreadnought even larger than the Indomitable. His fleet included carriers, battleships, cruisers, and support vessels. They moved with the precision of a military machine that had trained together for years. The Terran fleet did not immediately attack. Instead, they deployed satellites around every Zolthrene military installation in the system. These satellites began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending messages in every Zolthrene language. "Attention all Zolthrene military personnel. This is the Terran Defense Coalition. We are offering you one opportunity to surrender peacefully. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You will be treated as prisoners of war under the Galactic Conventions. Your wounded will receive medical care. You will be fed, sheltered, and eventually repatriated to your homeworlds. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. You have 1 hour to decide." Krathor was preparing to order his fleet to fight when something unexpected happened. 3 of his ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. Then 5 more, then 10. Within 30 minutes, half his remaining forces had mutinied and surrendered. "Traitors!" Krathor screamed. "I will execute every one of them." "With respect, sir," his second-in-command said quietly. "They are trying to survive. Perhaps we should listen to them." Krathor raised his plasma pistol and shot his second-in-command. The officer collapsed, his chest smoking. Around the bridge, the crew froze in horror. "Anyone else wish to question my authority?" Krathor demanded. No one spoke. But Krathor could see it in their eyes. Fear. Not of the humans. Of him. The battle, when it came, was swift and brutal. The remaining 20 Zolthrene loyalist ships fought with desperate courage. But courage was not enough against the Terran fleet's overwhelming superiority. Human electronic warfare blinded the Zolthrene sensors within the first minute. Railguns fired with impossible accuracy, each shot finding its target. When Zolthrene ships tried to close to weapons range, human fighter craft swarmed them, dropping precise munitions on weak points in their armor. The Terrans demonstrated weapons they had not yet used in previous engagements. Antimatter torpedoes that annihilated everything within a kilometer radius. Gravitic missiles that created localized distortions in spacetime, crushing ships like paper. Hunter-killer drones guided by artificial intelligence that adapted to every defensive measure the Zolthrene employed. But what was most terrifying was the precision. The human fleet targeted weapons, engines, and command centers with surgical accuracy. They disabled ships rather than destroying them when possible. They stopped firing the moment a ship surrendered. They broadcast safe evacuation routes for escape pods and actually protected those pods from stray fire. This was not the savage fury Krathor had expected. This was professional, disciplined military action. The humans fought like surgeons, cutting away only what was necessary to achieve their objectives. Krathor's flagship was the last ship standing. His weapons were destroyed, his shields were down, and his engines were offline. Human Marines in powered armor breached his hull and fought their way to the bridge. When they arrived, Krathor expected execution. Instead, the lead Marine, a woman with dark skin and calm eyes, simply said, "Marshal Krathor, you are under arrest for war crimes. You will be taken into custody and transported to a neutral tribunal. You have the right to legal representation. Do you understand?" Krathor looked at his dead second-in-command, then at the human Marines. They held their weapons ready but had not fired. His surviving bridge crew was being treated for injuries by human medics. "Why?" he asked. "Why show mercy? We would have destroyed you." The Marine's expression did not change. "Because we are professional soldiers, not murderers. Because the war is over and you have lost. Because treating prisoners with dignity is what separates civilization from barbarism. Now, sir, will you come peacefully, or do we need to restrain you? Krathor dropped his weapon and raised his four hands in surrender. As the Marines led him away, he finally understood. The humans had not just won the war. They had proven themselves superior in every way that mattered. The war ended not with a final battle but with bureaucracy and trials. The neutral tribunal was held on a station in neutral space, overseen by 3 species who had no stake in the conflict. The Galactic Council, which had watched the entire war with growing concern, sent observers to ensure fairness. Marshal Krathor stood accused of multiple war crimes, threatening civilian populations, deploying weapons of mass destruction against non-military targets, and executing his own officers for refusing illegal orders. The evidence was overwhelming. Human recording devices had captured everything. During his trial, Krathor was given legal representation by a Zolthrine attorney who had studied human law. The attorney argued that Krathor had been following orders from high command, that cultural differences had led to misunderstandings, and that the marshal had believed he was acting in his people's best interests. The human prosecutor, a soft-spoken woman named Jennifer Garcia, presented her case with devastating clarity. War crimes are not cultural misunderstandings. Threatening to kill 2 million civilians is not a difference in communication styles. Marshal Krathor had opportunities to withdraw, to negotiate, to choose peace. At every juncture he chose violence. The law is clear. The tribunal took 3 days to deliberate. They found Krathor guilty on all charges. His sentence was 20 years imprisonment in a facility designed to house war criminals. He would be eligible for parole after 15 years if he showed genuine remorse and understanding of his crimes. As Krathor was led away, he passed Captain Elena Vasquez in the corridor. She had testified at his trial, speaking clinically about the battles and her ship's capabilities. Now she stood quietly watching him. "Captain," Krathor said, stopping. The guards allowed him this moment. "I underestimated you. I underestimated all of humanity. That was my greatest mistake." Vasquez nodded slowly. "No, Marshal. Your greatest mistake was believing that military power gives you the right to threaten innocent people. We could have destroyed your entire civilization. We had the capability from the beginning. But we chose restraint. We chose justice over vengeance. That is the difference between us." Krathor had no response. The guards led him away to begin his sentence. The reconstruction took years. The Terran Defense Coalition established the terms of peace with careful precision. The Zolthrine Empire had officially dissolved, with each species forming their own independent government. This was not imposed by humanity but chosen by the species themselves, who recognized that their alliance had been built on conquest rather than mutual cooperation. War reparations were significant, but not crushing. The Terran economists calculated the actual damage caused by the war and demanded compensation equal to rebuilding costs, plus support for families who had lost members. They did not demand tribute or subjugation. The goal was restoration, not punishment. New Sarajevo was rebuilt with funds from the reparations. Human colonists returned to their homes. The planet erected a memorial to the 233 civilians who had died during the initial Zolthrine blockade, killed when a transport ship was destroyed trying to evacuate. The demilitarized zone between human and former Zolthrine space was monitored by a joint peacekeeping force. Humans served alongside Draylen and Vokrim volunteers. Former enemies learned to work together. Trust built slowly, one patrol at a time. Captain Vasquez was promoted to admiral and given command of the 6th Fleet. The Indomitable was retired from active service after 12 years and converted into a museum ship. It was placed in orbit around Earth, where millions of visitors each year walked its corridors and learned about the war that had proved humanity's strength. 10 years after the war, a cultural exchange program was established. Young Zolthrine, Vokrim, Draylen, and Morpheus studied at human universities. They learned human history, human philosophy, and human military theory. Many were shocked by what they discovered. One young Zolthrine pilot named Sektar attended the Terran Naval Academy. During a lecture on the war, she raised her hand and asked the question that many of her classmates had wondered about. "Admiral Vasquez," she said, "I have studied the Battle of New Sarajevo extensively. My analysis suggests that the Indomitable could have destroyed our entire fleet in the first engagement. You had weapons you did not use. You could have killed us all within hours. Why did you hold back? Admiral Vasquez, who had been invited to speak to the cadets, considered the question carefully. The lecture hall was silent, every student waiting for her answer. Because war is not about killing as many enemies as possible, Vasquez said. War is about achieving specific objectives while minimizing harm. Our objective was to defend New Sarajevo and convince the Zolthrine to cease hostilities. We could have annihilated your fleet, yes, but that would have meant tens of thousands more deaths. It would have meant your species losing an entire generation of trained spacers. It would have created blood feuds that lasted centuries. She paused, looking at the diverse group of students before her. Humans, Zolthrine, Vokrim, Draylen, and others sat together, learning together. Instead, we demonstrated overwhelming capability while showing restraint. We proved we could win without becoming monsters in the process. That sent a message not just to the Zolthrine but to the entire galaxy. Humanity is powerful, but humanity is not cruel. We can be your allies or your enemies, but even as enemies, we maintain our principles. That is what makes us strong in the long term. Another student, a human this time, raised his hand. But Admiral, some historians argue we should have been more aggressive. That showing mercy encouraged other species to test us. And how many species have attacked humanity since the Zolthrine War? Vasquez asked. The student paused. None, ma'am. Exactly. Our restraint demonstrated strength, not weakness. Every civilization in the galaxy saw what one human ship could do. Then they saw that we chose not to do it when we didn't have to, which is more terrifying. An enemy who kills everyone or an enemy who could kill everyone but chooses not to? Which enemy makes you think twice before attacking? The class sat in thoughtful silence. These ideas challenged much of what the non-human students had been taught about warfare and power. After the lecture, Sektar approached Admiral Vasquez privately. Ma'am, may I ask a personal question? Of course. During the first battle, when you faced 20 Zolthrine ships alone, were you afraid? Vasquez smiled slightly. Terrified. Every person on my bridge was afraid. Fear is natural, but we had trained for years to function despite fear. We trusted our equipment, our training, and each other. That made the difference. My father died in that first battle, Sektar said quietly. He was a weapons officer on the cruiser Talmarath. I grew up hating humans, hating you specifically, but now studying your tactics, learning your history, I understand something. He died because our leaders were arrogant. You gave warnings. You offered chances to withdraw. My father's death was not your fault. Vasquez placed a hand on the young pilot's shoulder. I am sorry for your loss. War takes good people on both sides. That is why it should always be a last resort. Your father served honorably within the system he knew. He deserves to be remembered for his courage, not his leader's mistakes. Tears formed in Sektar's eyes. Thank you, Admiral. That means more than you know. 20 years after the war, Marshal Krathor was released on parole. He had served his sentence quietly, using the prison library to study human military history and philosophy. He had written several papers that were published in academic journals, analyzing the strategic errors that had led to the Zolthrine defeat. He returned to his homeworld a changed individual. He could no longer serve in the military, but he became a teacher. He lectured at military academies, teaching young officers about the dangers of hubris, the importance of accurate intelligence, and the ethics of warfare. His most popular lecture was titled, "The Day I Learned Humanity Was Strong Enough to Show Mercy." In it, he detailed his own failures and the lessons he had learned. The lecture ended with a warning that became famous across the galaxy. Never mistake another species' desire for peace as inability to wage war. Humanity extended hands of friendship first. When we rejected that friendship and chose violence, they showed us what those hands could do when clenched into fists. But the most important lesson is this. Even when they had us beaten, even when they could have destroyed us completely, they opened their hands again and offered help. That is true strength. That is the kind of civilization we should aspire to be. The Indomitable floated silently in Earth orbit, its hull polished and pristine. Inside, visitors walked through the bridge where Captain Vasquez had commanded during the battles that changed galactic history. They saw the weapon systems that had destroyed nearly 100 enemy ships. They read the names of the crew members who had served. But the most visited section of the museum was a small room near the main airlock. It contained a simple holographic display that showed two lists side by side. On the left were the names of the 847 crew members who had served aboard the Indomitable during the war. On the right were the names of the 73,000 Zolthrine, Vokrim, and Morpheus who had died in the conflict. Beneath the lists was a single sentence in multiple languages. We remember all who fell on both sides, and we vow to make their sacrifice mean something by building a better peace. Captain Elena Vasquez, now retired after 40 years of service, sometimes visited the museum. She would stand before that memorial and think about the young people on both sides who had died because leaders had chosen war over diplomacy. But she also thought about the galaxy that had emerged from that conflict. A galaxy where former enemies studied together, worked together, and built something better. A galaxy where humanity had proven that being powerful meant having the wisdom to use that power responsibly. The Zolthrine had declared war to show their strength. Instead, they had learned what true strength looked like. And in learning that lesson, they had helped create something neither side could have achieved alone. A lasting peace built on mutual respect rather than fear. That, Vasquez thought, was worth all the battles they had fought. That was the real victory.